more attention is the dimension of youth. Right now, the program is re-involving stakeholders, as I mentioned, government, non-government, the press, the parliament, a lot of high-level bodies and so forth. I think more attention could be given to the youth. After all, the youth are really the next generation of conservationists, and so there is a lot more that can be done with that. I just want to end my remark by adding my congratulations to the other speakers, because I think we have here in front of us a very exciting initiative, and one that is likely to affect the way we are doing business in development. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruno. Our next panelist here is someone who cannot really hide behind his current title of Principal Investment Officer in IFC. That's Noman Mirza. Everybody knows him that until a few weeks ago he was Special Assistant to the President, and he was really the timing belt and person who instilled in us the uncompromised demands for quality, perseverance, and forcing people to work together in an efficient teams across silos. So Noman, please.
Thank you, Andre. I think in many ways, the best way to boil down my role in GTI was really to provide the authorizing environment and then just get out of the way. The way I was introduced to this program was when I first joined the President's office back in March 2008. My predecessor, Coralie Gevers, who in many ways was my role model for the job, gave me a very good overview of the different responsibilities I would inherit from her. And as she was leaving, she said, "Oh, by the way, there's also this one initiative which the President is very interested in. It's come from East Asia, it involves biodiversity, we're not quite sure how you're going to handle it, but I'm sure you'll figure it out." In many ways, I think part of the fun in being involved with this was that it had a huge creative element to it. It was a very loose idea, but with a very passionate and dedicated core group. Part of the challenge was really how to operationalize this idea. And so Keshav and the team worked together. In fact, back then the team was really just you and Andre. And to some extent, Vinod provided one of the initial impetus as well. And Richard, of course. So this very small and passionate team thought about the various challenges facing not just tiger conservation, but conservation in general, and tried to put together an action plan. And my role really was to help facilitate that, try to make sure that the different parts of the bank that needed to get involved and were helpful. And in many ways, this experiment yielded a lot of interesting insights. I was from IFC, and from that point of view, my knowledge of the bank and its operational structure was very limited, and that proved to be an enormous advantage. I didn't really know what was the right way to do it, but ultimately, nobody also created any limitations on how we could do things. So the secretariat that was formed was meant to be, in very many ways, a light touch model. Not something that was deeply embedded into any one unit, but something that had the flexibility to tap the best of all parts of the bank, and the bank group for that matter. And so by creating this light touch, we also tried to keep it as free from bureaucracy as possible. The President himself took a very active interest. We gave him very regular updates, and his one overarching direction to us was, we need to get the tiger numbers up. You know, this is the most important thing. How we do it is a secondary issue. So he was very open to ideas on how to do that. So with that approach, one of the things that ended up being a tremendous advantage was also very consistent with one of Bob's own visions for development in general. He had this concept of modernizing multilateralism, which was basically centered around taking advantage of a network. And this light touch model was really a virtual network in many ways, taking advantage of the International Tiger Coalition, taking advantage of our partners at WWF, WCS, later on Smithsonian Institution, the National Geographic Society, and really harnessing the passion and energies of each of these organizations to try to put together something which we can all work together, and leveraging each other's strengths. So from that sense, you know, my observation really is that this is in a way a new business model for the way the bank works. It's something that I think potentially can be applied to other aspects of biodiversity, potentially different species, and something which has a lot of merit in terms of looking at how the bank can work, not just how it has been working. So as someone coming from the outside, it was a way to help the bank work in the way that was tailored to this particular issue and not the other way around. And so that's really my perspective on the evolution of GTI and how it's gotten today. In many ways, the milestones that we achieved along the way, whether it was the various partnerships we formed, whether it was the summit that we had in St. Petersburg late last year, was something that should not be seen as ends in themselves, but really the means to the final end, which is to help get tiger numbers up. And this is an ongoing issue which I will remain involved with, even though I'm no longer part of the President's office. So thank you for that opportunity, Keshav.
Thank you, Norman. And of course, you're not off the hook from tigers because we're now breeding tigers in IFC, as you know, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, now we're going over to our anchor, Sustainable Development anchor, Sari Söderström, who has joined us from the field recently. And of course, the anchor is key to putting the glue to all the different initiatives that are happening across the sectors: biodiversity, environment, infrastructure, etc. Sari, please.
Thank you. So 2 years ago in East Asia, when the director of infrastructure came and said, okay, we should save the tigers, there were more than one of us who said, so why should the World Bank save the tigers? And Keshav did change his cap from a roads person and an infrastructure person to a tiger person. And I think during the past 2 years, he has clearly and loudly got the message around in the bank why the bank should care about tigers. And we all agree that this is a flagship species that can serve as a very useful indicator for us actually to see how well as we as the bank are carrying out sustainable development. How well are we coming towards a greener, cleaner, and more resilient world? So no question about that. We have, as Vinod said through the IEG report, we have starting to get a better handle on looking at our direct footprints and impacts of our projects. And we are also even starting to look at more broadly of the induced impacts of our projects and how they impact natural habitats more broadly. And using the tiger or working through the tiger to look at this makes a lot of sense in regions we hear now in South Asia, East Asia, where they're taking a lead to take this forward, and where the governments actually are spending hundreds of billions on infrastructure every year, but they are also becoming politically and culturally more committed to conserve wild habitats more generally and tigers in more particular. So while we are doing this, we are gaining great lessons and developing new methodologies to look at these that could help us to look at the greening portfolio towards a wider area of influence, but then not only looking at area-specific methodologies. I want to remind us that all of us are taking the TEEB initiative forward, and the bank is looking at how to look at the macro impacts through our WAVES program, Wealth Accounting and Valuation of Ecosystem Services. And I would like to put a challenge to the GTI team that while this is really an indicator of success, the number of people who are here, but Richard said too that we are really the environment family and all our environmental people who are here, that next time this year, once you have the room half full with country economists and some country directors, that is really the success. And this is what we are trying to do with the WAVES in terms of bringing the monetary value of tigers and wild habitats into the national accounts. So as a flagship, we should continue to use the tigers, even possibly within the WAVE system, and move forward. So congratulations.
Thank you, Sari. So now, of course, we come to the two, I guess, most important speakers in the bank, people who really make all these crazy ideas work and bring to the front lines of and deliver to the clients. We start with Sasha and Jimena, who did probably beyond miracle in bringing Mr. Zelik's commitment to a $100 million IDA investment into making it the first ever regional South Asia operation of IDA for wildlife conservation. So Sasha, please.
Yeah, thanks very much, Andre. I just want to pick up on something that Sari just said, and actually Richard too. As you know, I'm actually an engineer by background, and I love oil, gas, mining, and urban and roads. But I'm also an economist, and negative returns, you know, I understand that very well. So Richard, when we first broached this idea, I saw the challenge. And I saw the challenge in operationalizing. Sanjay, and I don't know if you remember, one of the early meetings of this group, I actually posed the question in a similar forum like this. I said, that's nice, we can have workshops and we can have conferences and we can talk a lot, but how would you operationalize it? Well, you know, and then I gave the answer myself, and we convinced people to actually go and borrow scarce IDA, and I think that is really the crux of the matter, is that the countries, our clients, in the first case South Asia here, Nepal, Bhutan, and Bangladesh, understood precisely the same rationale of negative returns and said that, look, okay, even though Nepal is people first, we will take some of the scarce IDA allocation that we have and put it into this type of regional IDA program on the ground, because that's really, we can do both. We can do something for the biodiversity, the tiger is iconic, and we can do something for the people living in these areas at the same time. Now, obviously, it wasn't that simple, but in the end, I think we did take this project has actually gone to board. It was approved on April 7th, and the second tranche, it's an APL, was approved last Friday. So we're making progress, and I'm pointing to the next speaker here, Christoph, who's going to help us get Laos, Vietnam, and Cambodia on board. By the same token. But having said that, all of the above, really, what does it mean? It means that what everybody has said before, you have to get the stakeholders on board, not only the tigers, but specifically, you have to get on board the internal and external clients. That be communications, that be NGOs, that be the governments, and that is really the crux. If you coalesce them around one issue, you can actually take it forward. So anybody who's sitting here who's thinking, oh my God, what a terrible hard way to do this, I mean, there's a total reward, and you just have to keep going. And the bank has changed. There is an environment in the bank to actually carry out operational lending projects, and not only workshops and conferences and talk shops. So that's really it from my end. Thanks.
Thank you, Sasha. So now over to East Asia, our initial home, Christophe Crepin, who is now doing another miracle of gluing together the entire East Asia portfolio around biodiversity and tigers, and bringing Asia Development Bank into the fold. Christophe?
Okay, thank you, Andre. Look, let me give you a little bit of regional perspective from East Asia here. When, we started a year or year and a half ago by contributing to the preparation of X meeting or Y meeting, and, as the coalition, this platform was building up to the, in the run-up to the summit, and we were not always clear on what exactly we were, this was going to achieve. And so we moved all that way to actually a portfolio and a dialogue. And this is what we've been working particularly in the past 12 months. So what has emerged is a portfolio of projects and a dialogue with countries. What I would like to say here is two messages. One on the portfolio, and with the feature of what we do, and I think that's a bit, that resonate with some of the things that have been said earlier. One, we have a portfolio that is catalyzed or is catalyzing a number of partnerships. You've seen, the NGOs have been very much involved in the building of that platform. What we see on the local level, national local level, is that partnership is also replicating in each of the countries where we're working. So I think that's a feature which is quite interesting. This partnership is also, of course, with the GF, as mentioned many times. I mean, there's been some kind of commitment expressed at this summit in GF, and we're just, bringing that down. And also some partnership with other donors. And one of the latest ones is unfolding is with the Regional Development Bank of Asia, the ADB. And so those are things that would not have happened without that dynamic. And I think that's one of the features. The other feature is on innovation. Sasha just mentioned the APL. I mean, the fact that we have a joint cross-region APL is quite a good important feature. That's also a partnership, internally. The fact that we're able to show that we can cut cost in terms of transaction costs, reinventing the wheel in terms of having project after project, but just using the same framework. That's also a tool of alignment internally. We have the same platform of dialogue and thinking, so I think that's quite an innovation. Innovation also in terms of wildlife trade has been mentioned quite a bit. This is not something that the bank has done a lot. We're actually engaging now in Vietnam, it's quite timely based on what we've seen recently, on the demand side of the wildlife trade. This is not something that the bank has done in the past. We would not have done it without that type of momentum. And then another example is this concept of wildlife premium, which is a complex and challenging one. What we actually, thanks to that, have engaged with the country of Thailand in particular, and are working through the loops and of the hopes of what that could mean on the ground. So there's a number of innovations that have been triggered by this thing. The third feature, and I would stop there in terms of trying to characterize a bit the portfolio, is also catalyzing the integration of instrument. I think there's also a broader recognition within the institution in the region that the solution, of course, is broader than those bits and pieces of projects that are coming up as a run-up to the summit. But there's a more comprehensive response to the handling of forest habitat and forest system. So what we see is an integration of our instrument, something much more comprehensive in terms of how we look at FIP and FCPF and then the GTI resources and the GF and all of that. So that is coming up, and is coming up throughout the portfolio. Now, a second message regarding the dialogue. Well, I think we also need to recognize that it's a very complex and challenging one. And one of the things that we just point here is, of course, the infrastructure agenda. And we have, on a daily basis, we actually already face some very important challenges in terms of the constraints and that the country have in terms of the aspiration for a number of things, in terms of our own portfolio on the infrastructure side. So to me, that's going to be a challenge for the coming months and the coming years. This is something in which internally we need to kind of reinvent ourselves, and I think that from there will be quite a bit of expectation that will be generated as we move forward. So we'll stop there, and we'll be happy from time to time to report on the progress we're making.
Thank you, Christoph. So our final panelist is another external speaker. That's Dr. Mahendra Shrestha. He himself comes from the Forest Service of Nepal and has been for many years director of the Save the Tiger Fund here in Washington, and now just joined to lead the Smithsonian Institute's capacity building program for the GTI. Mahendra, please.
Thank you. I think I recall that it must be late 2006 or early 2007. We reached out to Richard first, at the bank, just to get his input on some of the issues and the challenges that we were facing in tiger conservation, because many of us have been involved in tiger conservation for decades, but we needed some strong institutions like the World Bank who can really make a difference and bring a change. And it's very good to see the progress that the GTI has made so far over the years, and through this Tiger Summit, the political momentum that it has built is great, but and also it has been able to create the new hope in the tiger range countries, as well as many of the stakeholders that has been working in tiger conservation. And also the endorsement of the declaration, that's there, but at the same time, and also the Global Tiger Recovery Program. But the biggest challenge that we all face is to mainstream. Again, many speakers has spoken about that, mainstreaming these challenges and also getting their support and getting them on board. And regarding the resources, that we still have to gather, because the tiger range countries, they have put together a recommendation through the Global Tiger Recovery Program, and many of the tiger range countries, they have recommended that they need the help in the capacity building in terms of the institution as well as the individual leadership in conservation. So from that perspective, since I'll be leading at the Smithsonian Institution's capacity building and knowledge exchange program there, and the target that we have is to improve the management capacity, and the institutional capability in the tiger range countries in the partnership of many organizations that are involved. So, with the initiation of this global tiger initiative, at the bank, I think, we have created a greater hope for the sustainability and the recovery of tigers in Asia. And again, tigers, although many question, why are you only focused on tigers? Why single species? But it's the face of the biodiversity. It's the indicator of the ecosystem health. That's essential to maintain the health of the society as well. So I hope that the World Bank will continue, to support the Global Tiger Initiative, since it's such a prestigious institution and it can convene so many countries together for a shared goal. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mahendra. So we are slightly behind time, but we would still like to open now for some questions, and so whoever our panelists are would be available to try to answer them. Any volunteers with questions, please? Yeah.
Just say Richard Warden, who did the IEG evaluation, was here, and this is the paper that I mentioned.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Priya Shamsundar from Sandy, which is a research network based in South Asia.
Can you speak up a little?
Oh, okay, all right. Congratulations for an excellent initiative. My experience comes from India, and I had a question from the subcontinent. My understanding is that the Indian middle class is actually quite willing to pay to view the tiger. The tourism sector in India has grown tremendously, and in the Sundarbans alone, the numbers suggest that there's a 15% growth in 1 year, and that's just growing in leaps and bounds. And there's huge revenue being collected in certain parks, particularly the ones where people can go to see the tiger. My understanding also is, and this comes from some recent numbers from WCS, I think, that the number of locals employed as a result of the tourism sector and the growth in the tourism sector is minimal, 0.0 some percent of the local population is employed. So while I would applaud very much this effort to add a wildlife premium and sort of bring the global markets to local conservation, there is a huge local market. And that market is pre-existent, but is absolutely not tapped in terms of delivering locally, which is what you require for habitat conservation. And the habitats clearly are going down. So that's just, I'd be curious to see what sort of innovation is being considered to get some local financing from the local pre-existing markets. And also on the habitat issue itself, the corridors are much less protected than the protected areas. So that's part of what you're seeing. So whether there's been work that's happening in these countries to somehow give the corridors more legal protection to ensure that they continue to exist.
Shall we do it one by one or pick up other questions? Let's see if there are 2 more questions, and then we'll handle them in packages of 3. Here's, Yoko, GEF.
Thank you very much. Is it on? Yoko Watanabe from GEF. We've heard about the 2 regional IDA projects and the initiative on the ground, and I've also heard from I think the World Bank Institute and others on the capacity, also Smithsonian working on the capacity building initiative. But I'm trying to catch up on what is the future sort of direction? What are the other initiatives that are working on? I've heard about the premium work and others, but what are the concrete initiative to implement GTI in the coming months? Thank you.
That would be an easy question to answer. Okay. Do we have a third question? Okay, let's settle for the 2. So, Keshav, how would you want to handle the first question on the corridors?
All right, let me try to answer your question, Priya. What you point out is exactly right, that examples of benefit sharing in the Tiger Range countries, benefits of tourism, has been very, very sparse. And this is really one of the points I think I was trying to make, is that there are very good examples in countries like Namibia. And what you really find is that in India, the way, certainly in India in particular, the way the tourism is done is the tourists come in, the people that work in the hotels are brought in from the outside, and the profits flow outside the region. So it's purely, if you like, almost a model of tourism mining rather than benefit sharing. And as a consequence, a dead tiger is worth more than a live one. And there's every opportunity to turn that round. So I think there is recognition in government that this problem needs to be addressed, but of course, you know, there are many, many challenges in how you actually do it. And I would suggest that perhaps one role that the bank could actually play is in terms of initiating good examples of how tourism is actually done. And it's not just the Tiger Range. We've got exactly the same problem, for example, in Sri Lanka, you know, with the elephant viewing problems that occur there. So let me stop there.
I'd like to just, this is a extremely important issue because communities need to feel that they are sharing in the economic wealth which is being created. Take, for example, Ranthambore and other places. There seem to be two problems taking place. One is this high-end tourist companies which are coming in and using their influence, and they are investing, they are then generating funds and pulling everything out. The other is the problem that is being generated by very loose land use planning and these kind of models, which is encouraging a lot of local people to convert agricultural land into farms and these kind of touristy shacks. And there does not seem to be, in the middle of it, any kind of consistent policy which would encourage skill building or skill enhancement of local communities and retention of funds by the local communities as far as tourism is concerned. We are looking at IFC actually to come up with some models. We have Sean Mon there, who is one of our global resource on tourism, and to come out with some clear models, because this is really creating a, you know, we were in Bhutan. There is a huge tension in Bhutan today because the government has now brought in McKinsey to plan for doubling the tourist in Bhutan. McKinsey is now coming out with an idea, and the Tourist Council of Bhutan is very upbeat about it. However, the Forest and Environment Ministry, which is into ecotourism, just don't like them. They feel that these people are going to completely overtake these ecosystems and would ruin the wilderness and the entire ambience of the place. So they are trying to come out with their own ideas. This sector needs a tremendous amount of input from the World Bank, IFC, and all of us, GTI, and we need to focus on it. We have not, frankly speaking, Urvashi, we have not really. We've had few sessions on tourism. We had a session in Bhutan on ecotourism this time, which came out well, but we have not really come out with we need to emphasize this part of it very strongly. And on the corridors, I completely agree with you, but politically there seems to be, I believe the minister in India made a statement that he cannot protect corridors. So the corridors disappearing is perhaps one of the biggest issues, and we need to, they are talking about resource corridors and all kind of issues just now, but that also needs very strong, I think, positioning from our side. But thanks for the question.
Yeah. Thank you, Keshav. I guess maybe to start with answering Yoko's question, I would simply show this. You know, this is now what we do for the next 11 years, the Global Tiger Recovery Program. But there are several different ways of actually delivering the bits and pieces of it. You know, part of it is through normal bank projects, which are now starting to come up, you know, with a pipeline of projects, both regional and individual projects, and some of them are with GEF blending, some of them are individual GEF projects linked to the broader program. So kind of, usual bank and other investment projects working jointly with ADB. The second stream is the so-called global support programs, and there are 4 of them identified, and we are now working with partners to actually, bringing them as a focused delivery. One of them is on the capacity building, which we're doing with the Smithsonian and other partners already starting. Another one is on combating wildlife crime, and that's for which this consortium international consortium on combating wildlife crime is, putting their efforts together to get it delivered again through a variety of means. There is a separate thread on monitoring, both habitat and wildlife and prey monitoring, and also on the monitoring of the actual program implementation. And then there are these kind of innovative, business modalities which are also now being explored and being pushed through various ways in which the bank can get them delivered. The smart green infrastructure is certainly one that is getting increasing traction and interest, and we just did the first such workshop, as Keshav was saying, in Bhutan with 7 or 8 countries, Tiger Range countries participating. There is significant demand for more of that work to be really kind of integrated into the kind of bread and butter World Bank operations, and we are reaching out to the colleagues in ADB to kind of join forces on the same. And similarly with the wildlife premium, again, it's an innovative kind of beast, still a lot of learning and kind of figuring out how it could be done actually in a meaningful manner. We're working closely with our carbon finance colleagues in the anchor and with partners both internally and externally, but there is some private sector interest. So, but again, what we are doing this, but there are a variety of ways in which this will be delivered, and most certainly GEF is a major